Hello, gang. Welcome to the Illities, the channel where we talk all things traceability, sustainability, and supply chain visibility. Today, we're going to be talking about sustainability. Going to be sharing with you an abridged version of a webinar I gave last month as part of the Sustainable Solebury Live webinar series that started in 2024. I'll be talking specifically about food waste, starting at the global level and looking at the rather alarming statistics around how much food is actually wasted every year and the impact from households. We then talk about the solutions, technologies, and innovations different stakeholders and companies are using to mitigate or eliminate food waste and save money, and pivot to best before dates, best buy dates, use before dates, and expiration dates, and demystifying those for you so that you can make smarter decisions when you purchase food and how you manage the food that's in your household specifically, and then end with some tips and tricks that extend on that, even talking about things like how to better manage what's in your refrigerator so you're not throwing food away and wasting money, right? So this is all good. It all helps the environment and saves you money, helps your household. So I hope you tune in and watch the abridged version. The slides and the slide notes, which are sort of rather extensive because I did a lot of research for this webinar, are available free. Just email me. My email's in the show notes, and it's also popped up on the screen at the end of the webinar. So hope you enjoy, and we'll see you soon. So how big is this problem? So some facts and figures, and these are figures from 2022. So global food waste by volume is approximately 1 billion metric tons that are wasted every year, which is almost 20% of global food production. So it's a pretty big number. Food waste in particular generates 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, significantly contributing to climate change. If you were to compare food waste to the emissions of a country, food waste stacks up at number 3 behind China and the United States. So it is a huge impactor to the environment. Despite all that waste and the high levels of food production we still have over 780 million people faced with chronic hunger. And there's a big stark contrast between what we produce, what we waste, and people still going to bed hungry every single day. One of the most surprising facts that I learned about this when I was putting together the presentation, because I really wanted to dive into household waste. Household food waste contributes to 60% of the total. That is a huge number. Food sector, the fast food, fulfillment sector, and the groceries and distributors, that's about 26%, and then retail is about 13%. So 13% of food is wasted, say, at the store because it's not sold in time or it's not put out on the shelves in time, as an example. That 60% though is just mind-boggling in terms of its scale. Some of the technologies and the innovations and things that people are doing to combat food waste. So we have governments and we have intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations working on food waste. Two notable ones are the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and nonprofits like Sierra Club and World Wildlife Fund. They sponsor initiatives and programs on an ongoing basis to help industry and consumers and governments know how to regulate and set policy on food waste, as well as provide tools and put things into motion to measure food waste. All of it generally starts with awareness. So once you're aware of the problem, then you can begin to start thinking about how you're going to measure the problem. There's something called the Global Farm Loss Tool that has been out there for use for a number of years now, probably close to 10 years. And it's meant for producers and growers to be able to start measuring how much food they actually waste. And then by measurement from awareness, they can actually start to mitigate and eliminate some of those sources of waste. The waste, of course, costs money. It's land that's producing food that never makes it to market. So that's a cost to the farmers. There's losses through the supply chain as food moves through the supply chain because of spoilage or damage, as examples. So that costs money as well. And of course, at the retail level and at our home level. So these governmental institutions, non-governmental institutions, and industry associations are all working towards bringing better awareness to what's happening out there. There's two national efforts I'll talk about which are kind of notable. I was hoping to find more in the United States, but I haven't found any that are as kind of cool as what these two are. South Korea, for example, they've had a program that was introduced a few years ago in Seoul, South Korea, called Pay as You Throw program. So you get charged as a citizen an amount based on how much waste, food waste specifically, you put into your trash. That the fact that you're directly affecting the pocketbook of someone buying and consuming and using food, eating food, and then wasting it has led to a 10% reduction in food waste. And they've then since rolled it out from Seoul to other municipalities. When we look at the United Kingdom, they have there's something called the Waste and Resources Action Program, RAP as it's called. I have a good close colleague who works in the government there that works on plastics waste actually. But that department that he is in also works on this. They have a Love Food Hate Waste campaign, which has significantly impacted the amount of waste. It's reduced the amount of waste across the United Kingdom just through awareness and education alone, not any particular tool or a tax like South Korea, but just awareness so people are more present when they're thinking about what they're doing. There's also, I don't have time to go through everything you'll see in the slide notes. So at the end of the presentation, I have my email address. I will happily send you a PDF of the slides with the slide notes that has links for all the references I've used and a number of other things that I'm not going to have time to cover. But there are a number of different things going on. There's artificial intelligence is being used to, number one, help actors in the food supply chain get smarter about how they manage their orders, their inventories, and the supply chain flow of food itself, so that actually results in less waste occurring. There are smart packaging solutions that protect food far longer than it would normally need to be. There are coatings that are being applied to foods now that extend its shelf life, in particular, sitting at the store on the shelf, and then also when you get home. You take that food home, it extends the life of the food. And they're safe coatings that are safe to eat, but protect the product from spoiling. And then there's some advanced composting solutions out there that are really kind of interesting, and I have those highlighted in the notes of the slide. Two that are really kind of cool that I wanted to mention that when I, over 6-7 years ago, when I heavily got into food waste reduction as part of my work at GS1, the standards body, we were looking at things called revalorization. So what is that? Revalorization is when you take a product, say like a fresh herb or some bread, and it's no longer suitable for sale. So the fresh herb is perhaps a little wilted. No one's going to buy it if it's wilted. Normal folks don't understand that it's still safe to eat. It's still tasty. You can still put it in your ingredients, in your recipes. But they won't buy it anyway. So what can we do? We revalorize it, mean we legitimately take it back off the shelf, provide its traceability to where it came from to the next in line. And that might be a restaurant or a soup kitchen. And they can take that wilted herb or a slightly blemished vegetable, use it in a recipe, and avoid putting it into a waste stream. So that's revalorization. That is why there's a picture on the left of beer. Beer can be brewed from old bread. In fact, one of the oldest beer recipe in the world, I think, dates from some long before birth of Christ by at least 1,000 years, and it was beer that was made out of old bread. And it's still being done today in the US and Europe, which is really kind of innovative. The package on the right is an example. This is from South Korea. This is one that's dear to me because I eat a banana every morning for breakfast. And if I buy a bunch of bananas and I don't eat one every day, by the end of the week, I have a couple of extra bananas that might be kind of mushy. This company actually packages the bananas individually in their stage of ripeness. So as soon as you buy that pack, you have one or two you can eat right away. And then as you get to the end of the week in a few days, the fourth and fifth banana are now ripe. So you're not wasting any bananas in the process. They've taken some heat because of the amount of plastic packaging, which you can see here represented by this example, but it is a pretty innovative approach to helping consumers not waste food. Just as an aside, all bananas that you see at the supermarket are all pre-aged. They do not, that's not how they would normally arrive. They would all arrive very deep green if they were not pre-aged in conditioning environments at distribution centers before they go to the store. Each retailer puts out their specifications to the conditioning facility saying, this is how many days I want on the bananas in terms of their ripeness. So that's all actually predetermined for you. And what they're trying to do is get you bananas that are closer to ripe than not. So they're not sitting on your, sitting on the counter, um, not being used and because they're just not ripe enough. So those are two interesting examples. Let's move now for the last couple slides here to what companies can do and what we can do. So at the retail level, if you happen to know someone who runs the local Giant, the McCaffreys, the Wegmans, or Solebury Market as an example, or any of those around here, plus the retailers, the retail food establishments, I say, which are restaurants as well, they can do things like price markdowns. So you'll have seen this probably at Giant, as most notable. You might see the butcher coming out from behind where they cut the meat and package it, and he or she will be actually going up and down the aisle there, inspecting all of the labels on the meat that's out on the shelf already. So what they're looking for is something called sell-by date, or the package date they packaged it. And we'll talk about that in the next slide, so you get some clarity around what those mean. And for some items that are close to being to their sell date or should be sold sooner, they're going to take them off the shelf and they're going to slap another label on them, usually yellow or orange, with a price markdown. So what does that do? That encourages you to go to that item because it might be the same 12 or 1 pound thing of chicken next to the other packages of 1 pound chicken, but that one will be $1 or $2 less because it's been marked down. So that's a way retailers mitigate food waste. There are retailers in Europe that use dynamic methods with dynamic labeling, with little LCD price indicators on the shelves themselves. They're not paper labels that someone has to go and actually check. They know from their inventory when they should flip a price and offer a discount to move it off the shelf sooner so it doesn't get wasted. So we will probably see those things come to the US, but they're expensive and it requires investment. And the food waste problem has to be big enough for a retailer to want to actually try to tackle that as well. The other thing restaurants and retail markets will do is redirect excess foods to nonprofit food donations, food banks, and soup kitchens. Giant, as an example, I've been in a number of back rooms of Giant, and I've spoken to their people about their policies. They have a policy of no fresh items in a trash can, like you see here on this picture. They redirect all of that stuff either to composting or to soup kitchens and food banks, as an example. Um, let's see here. And the other one to mention is, of course, restaurants. We all know probably restaurants around here who might donate food to the local places. Now, this wasn't going to be part of my presentation, but I thought this is probably going to help you the most in terms of, along with planning your meals more appropriately and thinking about what's in your refrigerator, dispelling some myths and some misconceptions about the dating you're going to see on packaging is probably helpful here. So I'm going to go through each one of these individually so you understand them and you can use them in terms of what you buy and how you manage items that are in your refrigerator, as an example. So, and this is all in the notes in the slides with links to the information. So if you miss a little bit of it, don't worry, or ask me again at the Q&A. So best before or best if used by. This is a date that indicates how long the product is supposed to retain the best flavor or quality. So it's not a safety date. Most products sold with a best by date keep quality way past that date. So that's the manufacturer, the producer of the food saying, you should buy it you should use it before this date. You'll have the best experience, as an example. Then we have use by date. This is a date when you should eat the food. So as suggested by the manufacturer, it doesn't mean the food is necessarily bad or unsafe to eat after that date, but you should be more cautious. Make sure you look at what's going on, take a look at the food, smell it, as an example. You'll see this mostly on dairy products like milks and cheeses as examples, who have a much shorter shelf life and already have a bacterial load in what they are that over time will grow and could grow to unsafe levels if it's not consumed in time. Okay. One caveat though with use by date, that is on infant formula. On infant formula, always assume a use by date is a food safety date. Do not give an infant formula that's after the use by date. That's a clear distinction with use by. Then we have sell by. This is a date that informs the store how long to keep the food product on the shelves or when to remove it. Again, like I talked about earlier with the giant, the butcher, marking things down to try and not have to waste it, but move it off the shelf sooner. Um, what you should know as a buyer of food is that typically 1/3 of the product's shelf life remains after the sell by date for you to use at home. So don't think about a sell by date as, oh my gosh, it's after the sell by date, I shouldn't buy it just in case it's still there. It's still got 1/3 of its shelf life remaining. So go ahead, buy it. There should be nothing wrong with it. Freeze by date, you're not going to see much in the United States. It is on products out there. Um, it's it's toxic. It's really meant for products that you might bring home and put in the refrigerator, and then potentially you might decide to freeze it if you're not going to make it in original as after you bought it. There's a date at which by which you should no longer try to freeze it. It's not going to maintain its quality. So it's a food quality date, if anything. And then we have expiration date. I could talk for an hour on expiration date because I'm from pharmaceutical regulated industry, and expiration dates are a big deal for over-the-counter medications and prescription medications. Generally, for an expiry date in a food, you don't want to consume the food after an expiration date. And you may see that on a cheese. You may see that on certain meats if they're prepackaged, as an example. Expiry date means we've tested this package through accelerated analytical means, and we can attest to the product that will be safe and effective if it's used before the expiry date. After the expiry date, it may not be unsafe, but it may not also work, or it may not taste as good if in the case of food. So hopefully that just gives some clarity on these dates you'll see on packaging. And if we turn in the last minute here or two, what else can you do at home? So there's a couple different things you can do. I like this graphic that I found. It's from Al Jazeera, actually, of all places, on some things you can do to mitigate food waste in the home. Certainly, save your leftovers and make them into other recipes or eat them as a second meal. Know your dates, as we were just talking about. So I gave you a full slide on that, so that hopefully helps you mitigate that aspect of what you're buying and what's on the shelf in your pantry and what's in your refrigerator. I love the idea of buying ugly produce. There's a lot of food waste that happens upstream of the grocer, of product that never makes it to retail. It's wasted along the way because it does not meet the specifications of the grocer or the market in terms of its appearance. So an appearance has nothing to do sometimes, especially with a fresh food at the early stages of its shelf life, with its tastiness, its quality, and its safety. So don't hesitate to buy ugly produce. It's perfectly fine. And you're going to be doing the market and the world a favor by helping that not go into a landfill or to waste, into a waste stream. I didn't have time to put pictures in here. I have a number of different pictures of what that looks like. It's crazy to see all this food, really perfectly good food, in gaylords of pallets and trucks that's just being wasted because it does not meet the appearance requirements of the grocer or of the grocers, which is really unfortunate. Donate your food where you can. So if I think about that as well, donating is not going to be normally a normal activity probably for you in the home. But if you have a half of a refrigerator full of fresh food or a full fridge and you're going on vacation, and that food is going to spoil in that time before you come back, consider donating it. Fisherman's Mark over in Lambertville, if you have packaged food that has not been opened and is still sealed and is still fresh, they'll happily take your excess food as an example. And there are other outlets for that as well. The last thing is just that I like, and my wife and I practice this normally when we cook. This doesn't really apply to baking, and we're not bakers, so I can't really speak about baking. Because in baking, baking is largely more of a chemistry experiment going on every time you make something, and the measurements and the ingredients are particularly important. A little bit too much of one or too little of another is going to make for probably a terrible recipe, and then you might throw it out and waste it anyway. But when you're cooking, like say a stew or a soup or some sort of prepared meal that is not baking, think about how you prevent waste in that. So if you have, for example, a recipe that calls for 2 cans of 15 ounce, 2 cans of 14-ounce crushed tomatoes, and all you have is two 15-ounce cans. Just adjust the recipe slightly and use the extra 2 ounces. Don't waste them. Don't throw them away. To take stock of what's in the refrigerator and almost on a daily basis and look at what's happening within the refrigerator. Often we'll think we don't have something. We go in and look a few days later and, oh geez, there was a thing of fresh dill in there, and now it's kind of starting to look like it's beyond use. So just getting smarter about that can help you mitigate what goes into the waste stream. I notice it most because we compost. So I notice and I see, and so does my wife, about how much we actually put into compost. So with that, that is the slides. Um, this is my email address. It's tim@mdb.limited. So if you want the slides, shoot me an email at that, take a screen grab of this, whatever, or quickly jot it down. And I'm happy to send you the slides with all the notes. And if you have any follow-up questions we don't get to tonight, I'm happy to take them offline and see if I can be of help.